the record. Awesome. Cool. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so welcome to the Data Nerd Herd. I was just making a comment that this is this group is interesting. It kind of started as a response to whenever this loads. There we go. It started as a response to COVID and the fact that everyone was suddenly working remote. I wanted to start a community that data professionals and tech professionals could get together and crap. Does somebody have the ability to admit people besides me?
I can do it, Joe.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Okay, much appreciated. Yeah, so we started this group really as a way for people to get to know each other, not just in Utah, but around the world. We are Utah-based, but I think since then we've managed to get a good collective of people from across the country and kind of various countries as well. So anyway, yeah, so we're the Nerd Herd. We started doing these kind of informal topic discussions several weeks ago, and they've sort of taken a life of their own since then, to the point where this has become a really regular cadence, these Friday lunch chats. So I think we're going to keep doing them. We got some great speakers lined up, including Brian today. Brian's going to talk to us about managing successful data projects. This will be a really fun discussion. So the goals of the Data Nerd Herd, we want to build a diverse community of data professionals around the world. We welcome contrarians. This is a bit different than a meetup. For some background, I run 3 other meetups, and what I found was people were really attracted to the networking and the discussion aspect of the meetup, and I think the talk was almost secondary. So one of the goals is really to build around what makes meetups great, which ironically isn't so much the talk, it's the discussions that happen about the topic. And another goal is just to help people solve problems. Everyone seems to have various issues around data in their professional life, and the goal is to help people network with other people who could help them out. So kind of went over how this is different from a meetup. Again, it's virtual. You can meet people from around the world, which is another big differentiator from a physical meetup for pretty obvious reasons. And again, it's high value and low BS. We want to make sure that we have engaging discussions and a lot of thought put into topics and so forth. So there is a Slack group. It's invite only. Feel free to message me in the chat and I'll add you to it, or find somebody else in the Slack group to invite you. You may know who those people are. So we have upcoming talks next week and the week after, or the week after that one. Actually, we have Ramel Garcia from Imply talking about hot data and data warehouses. That's going to be a really interesting talk. It's kind of the notion of streaming data into a data warehouse and where it's applicable and where you might want to consider other alternatives. And then on the 26th, we have Jeff Baird from doTERRA. He's the data engineering manager there. He's going to talk about kind of gut-driven data analysis, if that makes any sense. So that'll be very fascinating to check out. And I guess that's enough of me talking. Let's give it to Brian. He'll introduce the topic and we'll get going. So just exit out of this.
All right. Yeah, so I'm Brian Campbell. I lead the little data engineering team at Lucid Software. We creators of Lucid Chart and Lucid Press. Yeah, I've been leading it for 3.5 years now, from the first time we thought of, the second time we thought of having a data warehouse to the present. And in that time, we've worked through a number of projects. Some of them just being simple, setting up dashboarding tools, all the way through machine learning pipelines. And so I took some time to look back on the projects that we've had and I reduced what made the different projects successful. I tried to reduce it to a series of steps we took that made those projects successful, and kind of cut that down to 6 bullet points. So what I hope for this format is I will present my 6 bullet points on what makes a project successful, and then open it to the room, see where we agree, where we disagree, or what other things you've done that have made things successful. For inspiration for this, so our last 2 talks have dealt with, so 2 talks ago we had Tyler Folkman talking about why you don't want to hire a data scientist. And so I started thinking about this, figuring out why we hire a data scientist. So you'll find at our 6th bullet point when I think you should hire a data scientist at least. All right. So let me get started here. So at Lucid, we call it the pyramid of data. I wish I had a graphic for you, but I don't. And that's kind of become our checklist for successful projects. And that checklist is data availability, reliability, accessibility, actionability, and automatability. I'll take you through that. But before we go with the data, my recommendation is to start with the problem you want to solve. I've seen a number of projects that start by, we have some interesting data, let's do something with it, or I have a thing I want to do, and digging into there, and those projects are more likely to tend to fail more often than just understanding a problem in your business or in your life that you're trying to solve. Once you have that solution, once you have the problem you want to solve, you can start looking at what data you have that will help you solve that problem. And I generally recommend, so this is our step of data availability. What data is available to help you solve the problem? And I generally recommend cataloging what data you want before you even go into finding the available data. Seeing, so you know what data is missing. Because that kicks us to data reliability. Do you trust the data that you have? Is the data that you have complete? Because you need to understand the gaps in your data and the consequences of those gaps, or else, because that is probably a leading cause of solutions falling apart. You have data, but it's missing a dimension for that you thought would be there. You get to the actual implementation phase of your solution, and it just falls apart. It doesn't do what it needs to. So you need to understand your gaps, what is and is not accurate, and what you do and don't have before you even continue to a solution. From there, you frame. At this point is when I recommend framing the solution. Once you've fully understand the data, what you have and don't have, framing the solution starts to make more sense because you can inform your solution based on what you know you have. But at this point, I would stay away from anything machine learning based, anything with artificial intelligence. Some of the popular solutions that we used at Lucid are just create a dashboard or some sort of visualization tool. My team churns out visualization tools, so that's what's been the most valuable to people, is being able to have some sort of way to get to data that is more accessible than a database, but more dynamic than just a dashboard. Other one is monitors and alerts. Just having someone get emailed that something is about the data has changed is different, allows them to take actions that is very valuable, as well as heuristics and rules-based systems. This is most common with, in Lucid Chart, we want to recommend to a user an action to take based on their previous behavior. Starting from a rules-based system would have helped that along, because we started with a machine learning solution there, and kind of it was painful to move along. Well, if we just had someone dig into the data, find some simple correlations, put those into code, we would have been able to make effective recommendations quickly. Yeah, and so then in the building is your solution, we have the data accessibility and data actionability phase. You make your data accessible to whoever is building your solution, and then the person building the solution makes it actionable, allows people to do things with the data. Because it's by taking action that people do something valuable. And then once you have a solution in place, you want to gather data about that solution as well. You need to know what information people are seeing and what actions they take based on that information. Because this becomes critical to any sort of machine learning implementation. Yeah. And it's critically, it is okay to stop here. This might be where you get the most value for your efforts. You don't need to move on to fancier solutions. You want to move on when you understand that marginal increases in accuracy dramatically increase value. So this is a case of like Google. Google didn't get into the machine learning game until they discovered that a 0.1% increase in click-through rates, it's like something tiny like 1.1%, led to billions of dollars of revenue. Like that's the value ratio you want to look into. And at that point, I argue that is the point you should bring in a data scientist to build on these heuristic models or these other rule-based systems to turn them into, to get marginal increases in accuracy out of them, to turn them into real value. And since your data is good and solid, a data scientist should be able to rip through that problem, no problem. Because that is another leading cause of failure is you bring in someone and your data is a mess and they can't do anything with it. But at this point, you've iterated on your data and you know that it's good. And it's providing you value and not somebody's off in a corner making a mess with it. So yeah, so those are my 6 points. I know some people in the Slack have mentioned that they have other frameworks they like. And so now I want to open it to questions as well as agreements or disagreements.
Can you just run through the list of the 6 terms again? Quick?
Absolutely. So availability, is there data, does the data exist or not? Data reliability, is the data accurate, complete? Data accessibility, can you make a solution from this data? Is it in a state that you can make a solution from it? Data actionability, actually doing something with the data, and then data automatability, like taking it to a machine learning AI level.
My question is, who would be your very first data hire to get you through all of those first questions if you're not really awesome with data as a company?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would argue, based on seeing our data team grow, that it was at it's the analyst, somebody that's willing to be comfortable with the data all the way through. I don't know if you want to put a title on that. For us, it was our hire as a director of analytics that really made things go. And so I believe, because we already had myself as a data engineer and one or two analysts at that point, and we were kind of fumbling along, but somebody that was willing to look at the full process and take ownership of the full process is what you need first. And that person could be an analyst, an engineer, a data scientist even.
I would argue the engineer would be the first. Just it makes a lot of the sort of secondary work or the analysis work end up going a lot faster if you can lay out sensible data structures to start.
Yeah.
And like you said, that can be 60% engineer, 40% analyst, or whatever. A lot of it's going to depend on who's actually around.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the thing to watch out for on the other side is, like, if you do hire an engineer first and the engineer just wants to engineer and doesn't want to help people like with visualizations and dashboards, like, your project's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Can you talk a little bit about, as data people, how you worked on not being like egocentric when it comes to finding problems to solve? Because obviously you want to have a business problem to solve, but we are maybe not the best experts on business problems.
It's true. I want to open that one up if anybody else wants to ring in.
I actually think, Brian, a good answer to that is what one thing you mentioned in your last answer, which is that when the director of analytics was hired, for context, I was on Brian's team when that happened at Lucid, or rather, I was nearby, so I was familiar with it, and I kind of watched it happen. And I think that having somebody that's like at the director level, somebody that is familiar with and comfortable diving into data, but also understands the business implications, that person, given that they have those skills and they are a good communicator, they can really be a bridge between the business end and the analytics end. And from what I understand, it worked quite well. I think also, to Lucid's credit, the analysts that you guys have, that you've hired, you've done a good job of selecting for people who do have good intuition of business needs.
That's true. A lot of our analysts are people that have business administration backgrounds. That, and as I think back to that earlier when we brought in our director, we can't understand that people were using data wherever they could find it. Salespeople had their own weird side sources of data. Operations had their side sources of data. And our most valuable early project was formalizing their data to make sure it had met these reliability and accessibility needs.
I can talk about your question for quite a while. I think that how you avoid the ego is recognizing that, you know, as data people, you exist largely to solve problems that, you know, in other people's lives. And that's, you know, I think we've all probably heard the story of like someone learns Excel and then becomes the Excel guru, right? And that's functionally what a data team is. You're just taking that like even a further level. It's like, you know, and then you talk about the reliability stuff, like, okay, how do we go establish a single source of truth and productionalize, you know, how we do data work and data analysis so that we're all sort of communicating along the same path logically, right? And the building block to me for a lot of that is what are the problems in the business, right? And that's, like you said, like how are the salespeople using data? Because they're doing it today, even if you don't know about it, right?
How many people have worked on things like developing KPIs with the business?
I have.
How did that go?
It's a struggle, and it's the largest struggle is agreeing on a simple definition and then productionalizing it. So, right, when you talk about a single source of truth, it's what is the single right definition that we're going to use here. And it's tough to get buy-in, and often it's just like, okay, we're going to start with these three things and then, you know, centralize the logic in some sort of business logic layer. And then, you know, we'll make adjustments to that logic depending on the needs of the business. But it's important to kind of have a starting place to base those discussions on. And, you know, as you build on that, you run into a whole lot more difficulties. And then, you know, I had a situation a couple years ago where we went to, and this was maybe a 2,000 person company, and the sales leader had something like 25 different KPIs that he looked at on a regular basis. Yeah, I see the look on your face. And this was not uncommon throughout the business, right? And it's, so you run into those, and we sat down with him and said, okay, how can we pare this down? He's like, I think I can get rid of like a lot of these. And he ended up with 18, right? And it was still like what are you going to do at a certain point, you know? So I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, because I always found like the deciding determining the objective was always a really hard part, right? Because it kind of precludes any success you would have. If you're going in the wrong direction with data, then you're going in the wrong direction, period, right? With your project. So it's like you kind of need to know where you're going. But it's often the hardest part, like you say, because definitions can vary and meander depending either the time of day or who you talk to.
Yeah. What I've usually gone with is trying to establish the handoff points between business units. So, you know, if I've spent a lot of my time in marketing and sales, right? So it's like, when does something turn from a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead, or what is the point where it actually gets handed over? And that's usually the important part, and everything about, you know, before that is managed in the marketing. Everything after that is managed in the sales.
So I guess, how do you know what data sources are worth using? That's a question to Brian and everybody else.
Okay. Yeah. I have a pretty abstract look at data sources, since data sources are they're trying to represent something about reality, and So when I judge a data source, it's how well does it represent the reality that it's trying to. And that can be anything from looking at what dimensions are on it to my favorite thing is to have multiple data sets that point at the same thing and seeing if they agree or disagree. So we like the most common one is like revenue. We have so many different ways to look at revenue, from your payment processor to whoever's handling your because we have invoices, we have payment processing, we have no doubt have somebody else writing down revenue somewhere else, and seeing where they agree and disagree lets you make really good choices about what data to use.
I guess, what do you mean by data source?
You talking to me or Brian?
Yeah, I mean, do you mean, is it the group in general, I guess?
Yeah.
Like external, internal?
As an engineer, it's like anything I can throw code at, I can do something with. Like, be it raw text files to a nice, handy, collected, curated CSV. Like, I can extract some sort of information from it.
The question for me is always, what decision are you trying to make with the information?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you deal with the situation where you have a homegrown system that people are really attached to and will not relinquish it under any circumstances, even though the data may be of questionable value or viability?
So we turned off one that had been on for years at this point. I had implemented it 6 years ago, and it finally got turned off this week after years of us knowing it was problematic. The reason we were able to turn it off now was because 3 years ago, we brought in a replacement and slowly converted everyone. Like, getting people off of the other one, but that's not been all of our stories, because sometimes you can do it by fiat. You got to sell a director, you got to sell an executive, and they can just tell everybody else, you're doing it different now. Get in or get out. But this one, too many people liked it, so we had to slowly sell the alternative.
And I guess, how are people consuming the data at Lucid then? Like, how are stakeholders getting their data and making decisions?
Okay. It depends on who you are. Most people have dashboards. That's what we have a slew of analysts, all of them great at Tableau now. And so many people have bespoke dashboards for their use case. And they are pretty involved, down to salespeople getting a list of which accounts they should reach out to today. It comes in the form of a Tableau dashboard. Other people, we've built some other custom visualization tools when there's more math required. The main one there being around A/B tests. If somebody wants to run an A/B test, we've built a tool for seeing who's on which arms of tests and the metrics, the conversion rates, and doing the statistics and providing visualizations there around how different arms are performing.
What's other people's experiences with what Brian's touched on so far?
Well, I'll ask, do you run into issues with the number of bespoke dashboards? Like, we try pretty hard to standardize.
I'm going to say, honestly, we might be, but that's far enough from what I do that I don't know, sadly. There's definitely a pattern of expanding and contracting there, of trying to meet lots of different people's needs and then finding their overlap and trying to bring them together later. It's a long period of conversions.
Yeah. I've got a question for you. Is anyone using any automated tools to streamline the data process?
What does the data process mean to you?
So the data prep, the data acquisition, just everything until you have a curated data set to work with, either for analytic, data science, dashboarding.
I would be curious if anyone did. That sounds amazing.
My first reaction is, does Python count?
Sure.
This is probably where DBT fits. That it doesn't automate it, but it at least makes it easier to do. If you're not familiar with DBT, I don't really use it. It's more an analyst tool, but it lets them run SQL scripts on a schedule and build complex SQL scripts from templating, which has been really powerful for them to curate their data sets.
I think the data
right.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with like the data process, to me, it often involves like understanding a data source, understanding the business process around it, and then technically trying to understand how we can get the data. And it seems like every single data system is totally different. I mean, some software we buy has APIs, but not very many. Some of them are documented, most are not. Some have custom exporters. Some want to use SFTPs to get you data. And it seems like everything is just different. So when you said data process and automating, like learning the data and stuff, I'm like, that sounds like a person. But if there were a tool to help with that, that would be super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's bits and pieces where you can fit things in, like you can automate flows with like Fivetran or Stitch, and that works a lot of wonders. That removes, I think, a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting. Then there's also tools like Data Prep and Trifacta that I think at least help automate the cleansing process of the data. But it's still, to Rochelle's point, you still got to know your data. That I don't know that in a world of structured data, that never goes away until there's some sentient AI that somehow knows your business data and domain expertise and all that. But that's not happening for a while. So yeah, and it's interesting. But then, yeah, it seems like there's like bits and pieces for the pipeline, but everything is so varied because it's all situation dependent that I think it'd be really hard to have one comprehensive tool. In fact, I see the world splintering away from that, actually, because you used to have tools like Informatica and to a lesser extent Talon that kind of claim to be the end all be all of data tools, but it seems to be going in the reverse actually now. So more of a microservice type approach. So you're just getting best of breed for your particular use case. But I think, again, to Rochelle's point, your use case, your mileage varies depending on your data source. It's as simple as that. So, I mean, some people are still requesting that you use SOAP and XML, for God's sake. That's hell on earth for the people that get to deal with that. So,
I'm curious for Brian and anyone else who kind of manages a data team, how much, when you talk about like getting to know your data and implementing a data project, have you ever had it where you develop something really cool that's either exploratory or a really big data set that you've integrated, and you roll it out and then they find issues with the reliability, either because of the business process or because of the data pipeline that you couldn't know before you rolled it out? And then how did that go, and how did that impact the project in general?
I know Ken's on this call, and he's my person that cares most about reliability, so he might have an example that comes up quick. I'm trying to pull one out.
Sorry, mic was muted. I was just trying to think of an example here. I know that various issues do come up, all the time, frankly, and I guess one thing that's maybe a little bit of a parallel discussion to this, Brian, that maybe you should talk about is our data lineage tracking, because that's caused a number of issues in the past. I'm just trying to figure out even simple stuff like, you know, something in a data source, say like a production database, has changed in some subtle way. And recently we've been doing a lot of push to try and detect those changes and track them all the way into our warehouse so that we can say, oh, like, you know, the name of this column has changed. Or, you know, maybe someone has added a column. Do we need to consider, you know, maybe adding that in as a better or improved source of data? But then, you know, ultimately, I guess it just relies on having really solid analytics to catch things that don't look right, right? Like if revenue goes up or down, like I'm probably not the most qualified person to know whether that was a reflection of reality or whether that reflects something that's a deeper problem. And of course, I think there's a whole set of, you know, automated systems that you could build around detecting changes in your data set. And I know that we've looked into a number of those.
Yeah, I don't know if that matches what you're talking about, Rochelle, because my team is at a point where we spend most of our time maintaining existing data sets rather than introducing new ones. But our existing ones have a host of reliability issues stemming from a small change, like Ken said, in like a production schema means that an ETL job stops getting one column. So we've been trying to automate detection around that. The fun one I've had recently was like marketing changes a page, so people exit that page faster, which means one of our click tracing events didn't stop firing before people would exit. And like pandemonium came because now we can't track this event anymore. And so, yeah, so a lot of it is being nice to the people that depend on their data, and so that they give you the space to triage the problems.
Who usually acts as the that ambassador? Is that you?
Depends on the area. I've owned click tracings for so long, so that when there's something breaks with the click tracing, like I'm the face of it. But our director of analytics is the face for a lot of other issues.
I guess on that note, like for successful data projects, like what's the blend or the balance of, I would say, the technical versus the diplomatic aspects?
The technical side, as the technical person, I think of the technical side as the easy side. And it's like what people like Rochelle mentioned of like building empathy for the people that depend on the data, so you understand their needs, is kind of a crux that it all hinges on. If you fail there, the rest of it's going to fall apart. As well as making sure on the flip side, on the other side, people are happy with their solution, and understanding where you need to iterate it is also important to building value. While building the solution is usually a small part of that. So in the group Slack, Rochelle, you mentioned that your own company has its analytics project readiness checklist. I was wondering how that looks like what we've talked about and where it differs.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in the writing of it. My boss was, but she essentially had a checklist pretty similar to yours that was like, how actionable is it? Is the data available? Can we get to it? Because we were being pummeled with analytics projects that were just, dreams in the sky.
Okay.
And the data was more or less available and more or less reliable. And we were just trying to surface those issues. And so we tried, and I'm not sure it's really actually taken off super well, because again, the diplomatic part of this is really difficult. But trying to get stakeholders to understand if their project is actually ready to launch or not, and how they need to partner with us to get it ready, right? Because if you have a sloppy business process, then the data is going to be sloppy. And we do have a lot of departments that are like that. But it's helpful to get a framework when you have a lot of demand, like you were talking about, and then prioritizing, right? What's the low-hanging fruit, I guess, when it comes to projects? Can you build this dashboard in a week, or is it going to take 6 months because you don't have any of the data? And then it helps get buy-in from your data team and from the stakeholders. So yeah, she was using like a stoplight color scheme on each domain, right? So like, is your data yellow, green, or red as far as reliability goes? And that determines like how much work it'll be to get it to a green state, to get it ready.
Yeah.
Do you work with like business operations people or like a finance group for an ROI analysis for this stuff at all?
We haven't, no. I mean, I guess we approach it from a business operations standpoint of like, how robust is the business process? I think that's what that means. We don't really talk about ROI that much, unless it comes to like student impact, since we serve students. And so if something, is a dramatic help to students or reduces a barrier, then we would consider it, high impact. But we don't often measure dollars when it comes to like revenue. Let's see if I can try to pull this up. Oh, here it is. Yeah, does that kind of get at what you were asking?
Yeah, it does. I'm more on the sales side, so the ROI is usually reasonably, provable, especially on the sales sort of marketing analysis,
Yeah, higher ed has been really interesting because there are very, very long delays between actions and outcomes. Even when it comes to student enrollment and revenue, it takes months to realize those effects. And then graduation is the biggest outcome, and that's several years down the road. So when you talk about actionable things and, trying to influence the future, it gets really difficult. There's a lot of time and a lot of variability in what can happen. Yeah.
Are you going to share that, or?
I'm trying to find there it is. Here it is. I can't tell if it's sharing.
It is.
Okay.
And I think it's awesome you have checklists too. This is great. So.
Can you see the Adobe? I can't tell what it's sharing.
It says, the tab says student analytics with a C on the end.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is what we proposed for the steering committee as far as like how to assess a project. And the goal really should fall into strategic initiatives defined by the college. So the college has 5 strategic initiatives around, education, diversity, equity, completion. And so anything that, we work on should align with the college objectives. And if it doesn't, you need to maybe go back to the drawing board. But I think this is kind of the feasibility check that you were talking about, Brian, when you talk about, process culture. Is it accessible? What's the ROI? What kind of resources are needed? Early wins. Should we just buy a solution? And is it ethical?
Does anyone else in this discussion have a kind of a similar rubric that they use?
We do, though I don't know if I can share it, just internal company stuff, but it's fairly similar. It's just, we're, like I said, we're more of the business, so our goals are really how do we save money or are we making more money, fundamentally, and then we break kind of that down further.
Brian, you kind of talked about how people use what you make and if they're actually taking action. How do you do that?
So a lot of that is through clickstream data. Like I said, I've owned clickstream data for our product for a long time, and so adding that to like the visualizations we make was pretty easy. Like I know, like in the clickstream, I can keep track of what pages people are accessing, what reports they're running, and then if they do anything in the page after that. But yeah, getting the actions they actually take is much trickier. It can depend on surveys. Yeah. As well as like, yeah. My other tip there then is we haven't been able to do much of it is to get the actions people take close to the point where they have data about the actions. And this has been most valuable in things like when users request refunds, having information about their account close to the refund button lets you see that information, as well as when you're showing information to users, like recommending what action they take. It's very easy to keep track of what action they then take inside of the product because it's all together. But when it's spread apart, it's much more difficult.
I mean, is that something that you sort of A/B test or have any metrics around as you build up these systems and then refine them?
So our work is, I've mentioned, split between a product and internal work. And so our product team has built a very refined A/B testing system. So we've been able to use that for cases in the product. And there's some question then of, how do we come back and implement these learnings, this knowledge to our internal work? The biggest hindrance being A/B testing statistical method usually requires a large amount of data. And when you're a company with 500 people and only 10% of them are going to use what you're working on, you're just never going to get the sample size you need to measure smaller gains.
That makes sense. I have a question. Like, so how do you address things like resume-driven development? So you have maybe team members that want to explore the latest, greatest technologies. Like, how do you balance that against your initiatives?
I don't know if I'm the one that should answer that because I'm the person that says, just go do something cool. Like,
I was actually going to say that I'm the person on Brian's team that tries to explore the latest and greatest.
How do you decide what to focus on?
So normally there's a broad number of problems to solve. I'm a sucker for the old MBA. You make a graph, axes on the board, and you chart it by the potential value and the potential effort, and try to find what's going to give you the most value for the least work. I feel like I'm in a privileged position there compared to other groups I've talked to that don't have as much leeway in choosing their work, though.
We block off, or I say take a day a month and research something that you care about, and I just kind of build that into the timelines that we provide out for how long things are going to take for the rest of the business. And that's, it's a team of 4, so that amounts to 1 day a month for a team of 4 people is, like, I don't want to say easily hideable, but it's easily hideable, and then occasionally you get something really interesting and cool, and you get to go give that to a salesperson and say, hey, you've got something new to sell now, and they're very happy about it, right? Or whatever the outcome is. So it's I'm not doing any serious ROI tracking right now, but I think it's interesting and valuable, and it is a nice sort of balance there, without going full Google, like 20% time, just because I think it's hard to be creative on a schedule too.
That's a really interesting point, actually. It's hard to be creative on a schedule. I like that. Anyone else in the group have any thoughts on that?
I just experienced the ramifications of resume-driven development because we implemented something and it was not the right solution, but we all kind of wanted to learn it and do it. And then we decided that it needed to go away because it wasn't meeting all our needs. But then we had to convert everything we did have, which it wasn't much, but it was so specifically developed in that tool that it has been extremely difficult to convert to anything else and really sucks. So now I feel like I'm gonna like think a lot more about the platform that we develop on and do something that actually fits the needs and not something that fits my skill set. But yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it could be easy to fall into this trap. The resume-driven development. I try and set expectations with my employees. I lead a team of 4 early on. That I'm here to help you grow your career. I know you're not going to be with us forever. I want to do the things that we can do to help you grow your career, but also provide value to our company. And so. My employees, at least the ones that I have and work with, they feel like they're growing their career and growing their resume by doing meaningful projects. And I try and find them stretch projects. We never focus on the technology. You know, I got some R users on my team, got some Python users. And so, you know, in our one-on-ones, we talk about, it's not about the technology, it's about the skills you're developing and thinking about how you're providing value to the company. Yeah, we can help you learn how to develop a Python package. That's great. That'll provide value to the company, and that's going to look good on a resume. It's not about using the latest and greatest, say, machine learning tool or data moving tool. So I think some of those expectations, at least for me, need to be set early on in your tenure and with your employees. That you know, I'm here to help you grow your career, but we're going to do it in a way that is mutually beneficial.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I usually encourage people when they're writing their resumes to focus on the outcomes that they've produced versus the toys that they've played with. So technologists sometimes have a hard time hearing this because I think there's a tangent to resume-driven development is GitHub-driven development. So you want to make your GitHub page look amazing, sometimes at the expense of adding value, however that's defined. So. Yeah, it's interesting. But it comes back to teams, though, I think, because, you know, successful projects, I mean, inherently would deliver value. At least I think inherently they would. But I've seen people deliver a lot of value even back in the day using something as simple as Excel. It moved the needle for the business, right? It's kind of all that matters at the end of the day. Data has grown a lot since that time, but I don't think the nature of a business has changed that much. People still need to make money. It's kind of the bottom line. So, but I think data science, it's, you know, the sexiest career of the 21st century, or used to be until a few months ago. So I think everyone wants to kind of jump on the bandwagon. I think to your point, Tyler, like, you know, get into the latest machine learning packages. And so it's an interesting balance for sure. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yep. No, I appreciate your comments there.
Yeah.
It is a difficult balance, and you know, I just think it's a lot easier to manage the balance if you set these expectations for, you know, early on. How are you going to help people grow and the right, you know, right way to do it. The balance is, you know, their career expectations for the business needs, and yeah, absolutely right. That on your resume, providing the value and showing that you can provide value and what you've done for a company is more important than just listing the tools that you've used.
Well, Brian, we got about 8 minutes left. Anything been burning to discuss on this one?
I do have one. So another one from our group Slack. I think No, never mind. That wasn't. I misread it. So my last question for the group is: I made an assertion about when you should hire a data scientist, and I want to get if people agree with that or disagree. Like,
I agree that you need to establish a solid ROI for that data scientist before you hire them. Like, they need a very clear problem to solve. So, you know, where you draw that line, I would put kind of up in the air. You know, I think you said 0.1% of a number. Like, you know, the percentage matters depending on the revenue you're bringing in.
I think why that's a really profound statement that I hear go unaddressed a lot. I do appreciate the ROI and the hiring decision of a data scientist. So it's awesome.
I was the first data hire for my company, and I'm currently the only data hire. I'm a one-man data team, and 80 to 90% of my work is data engineering kinds of things. But I'm able to push all the way from data engineering things to data science things if we need them, to functional reports and dashboards. And so we're still kind of in the growing stage of data maturity within our organization. And so I think bringing on a generalist data scientist who can do your data engineering, data science, and data analyst work initially is probably not a bad hire, I think.
So yeah, Bob, in those early stages, like how much of your work is what you'd consider traditional data science work versus engineering and analytics?
Oh yeah, data science is very, very, very small. So.
Yeah, just thought, because like it's great that for an organization to have that capability to grow in that direction, but yeah, investing early there is not a good bet for an early organization.
I guess how many people have seen companies hire data scientists without really understanding why they hired them?
Like by a show of hands.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the problem we have sometimes is this top-down management that happens where a C-level exec will get excited about data scientists without really having a technical understanding. And so they'll just give marching orders, go hire these data scientists and they're going to take care of all our problems. And you need like really good communication between the execs and the people who are actually going to be running the teams to make data science effective.
I think one part of the conversation that people seems to be prevalent is that some companies are hiring data scientists too early without really knowing what they need. My experience has almost been that companies are, at least I've worked for, are hiring it a little too late. And so when somebody with a bit of data fluency, data literacy comes on board, you got to backtrack some of those old previous decisions that were made when somebody that might have just had a a statistics class in college came on and was kind of the data expert. So you don't want to bring on data scientists when they certainly have nothing to do, but overall increasing data literacy will help companies be able to make these decisions earlier on about when to bring on a true expert.
I would argue that someone who's going to be the person increasing data literacy in the company is probably more of that data analyst than what I would think of as a data scientist.
Yeah, I think that's completely valid. And the data analyst job title is, in the rush to hire data scientists and data scientists being the sexiest job and whatnot, data analysts are being overlooked and is almost thought as a first tier type career when it shouldn't be. It's a valid and very valuable career, and I think those of us who are bored, in some of the more modeling and maybe the programming fluid aspects of data science should do more to encourage data analysis as a career and within companies without feeling that we're superior in some ways.
Wow, I think that should be a topic for another discussion. We could probably dive into that one for a good hour at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Data analysts, I think it's becoming less of a misnomer. But for the last few years, I mean, you may as well be on, some lowly. I mean, it was just considered like a lowly position. I think there's a lot of like data science snobbery around analysts, and it's undeserved. So
we've seen one of the groups we watched. I can't remember who it is now. Like went through and renamed all of their data analytics positions data scientists, and all their data scientists ML researchers, just so they could attract talent.
I think that was Lyft.
It's Lyft.
If I remember.
Okay.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, I've had to personally sign. I mean, this may give you some perspective, but one person who was an H-1B needed to, I guess, have a compelling job title that would keep them in the States, and so they asked if I could change their title from, I think it was analyst to data scientist. I'm like, doesn't matter to me. If it keeps you here, great. Even though what you're doing is you're an analyst. So maybe a bit of a disingenuous move, but it kind of is what it is, because data science is considered a rare skill, right? Analyst it's a bit more traditional. So it's the title games are very interesting. So cool. Well, it's coming up on 12:30. So anyone have any questions or last comments? No? Cool. Awesome. It's been a quiet group today. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. And yeah, next week we got we're going to be talking about real-time data. I think where it's useful, where it's not. So that'll be I think an interesting topic. There's a lot of confusion about that we hope to clarify. So it'll be awesome. So cool. Well, have a good weekend.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Yeah, of course. See you guys.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.